crystal champagne flute trembled in her grip as Michael Warren raised the pitcher of murky dishwater above his wife's head at his parents' anniversary dinner. His mistress Amber standing beside him with a triumphant smirk. Elena sat motionless, her $12,000 Valentino gown about to be ruined, while 50 guests watched in horrified silence. None of them knowing the woman being humiliated had quietly built a $50 billion real estate empire over the past decade. The dirty water cascaded down her face and shoulders as Amber's hand connected with Elena's cheek in a vicious slap, her stiletto having just been stepped on accidentally. "That's what gold-digging trash deserves," Michael's mother Patricia laughed from across the table, her wine glass raised in mock celebration, completely unaware that the company name on her own paycheck, Warren Global Properties, belonged entirely to the woman now dripping with filth. Elena's eyes, cold and calculating behind the wet strands of hair, fixed on Patricia's face as her mother-in-law's laughter echoed through the ballroom. What would happen when Patricia discovered she'd just mocked her actual employer? How would Michael react when the wife he'd publicly degraded revealed she owned everything he'd ever dreamed of having? And what devastating move would Elena make when she decided his entire family deserved to be left with absolutely nothing? The dirty water wasn't just water. It was the remnants of the kitchen mop bucket Michael had specifically requested from the catering staff, wanting his humiliation of Elena to be as degrading as possible. As the brown liquid soaked through the French silk of her gown, Elena Martinez Warren remained perfectly still, her posture impeccable despite the gasps echoing through the Grandview Hotel ballroom. She'd trained herself over 10 years of marriage to show nothing, reveal nothing, surrender nothing of her true self to these people. "Michael, isn't this a bit much?" his father Richard finally ventured, though his voice carried more amusement than concern. He adjusted his tie, a Christmas gift from the generous corporate office of Warren Global Properties, though he had no idea the woman currently being degraded had personally approved that bonus. "A bit much?" Amber's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. She stepped forward, her red dress strategically tight, her youth deliberately on display. 26 to Elena's 38. "This pathetic woman stepped on my Giuseppe Zanotti heels. Do you know what these cost?" Elena knew exactly what they cost. She also knew Amber's credit card had been declined twice before Michael's card finally went through. Elena's private investigators had documented every transaction, every hotel room, every lie told over the past 18 months. But that information sat in a secure file, waiting for precisely the right moment. "I apologize," Elena said quietly, her voice steady despite the sewage water dripping from her chin. "It was an accident." The apology made Amber angrier. She wanted rage, wanted tears, wanted the wounded animal response that would justify what came next. Instead, she got controlled civility, which somehow felt like its own form of defiance. That's when Amber spat directly in Elena's face. The saliva mixed with the dirty water, sliding down Elena's cheek as the ballroom fell into stunned silence. Even Michael looked uncomfortable for half a second before his mother's laughter shattered the moment. "Oh, this is better than cable." Patricia Warren clutched her stomach, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light. "Michael, where did you even find such a doormat? I've been telling you for years she was dead weight." Elena's hand moved slowly, mechanically, to wipe her face with the cloth napkin from her lap. Her movements were precise, controlled, the gesture of someone performing a rehearsed action. Because she had rehearsed this, not this exact scenario, but something like it. She'd known for 3 years that this moment would eventually come, had prepared for various versions of her husband's betrayal becoming public. What she hadn't fully anticipated was the specific cruelty of his family's participation. Richard Warren worked as a regional property manager for Warren Global Properties, overseeing a portfolio worth $800 million. He'd held the position for 6 years, received stellar performance reviews, earned a salary of $340,000 annually, plus bonuses. Patricia worked in the corporate PR department, a comfortable sinecure that paid $180,000 for approximately 15 hours of actual work per week. Neither of them had ever met E.M. Reyes, the famously reclusive CEO who'd built the company from absolutely nothing. Elena had used her mother's maiden name, Reyes, and her initials specifically to avoid this kind of discovery. In a world where female CEOs were scrutinized relentlessly, where every decision was questioned and every success attributed to men behind the scenes, anonymity had been her greatest strategic advantage. You know what the best part is? Michael leaned down, his cologne overwhelming, his breath wine sour against her ear. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and you're going to walk away with nothing because of the prenup you stupidly signed. The prenup, of course, the one document Elena had deliberately crafted with her own attorneys, designed to look protective of Michael's family wealth while actually containing clauses that would prove devastating to him. The prenup that stated any assets acquired through independent business ventures during the marriage would remain the sole property of the acquiring spouse. Michael thought that clause protected his father's real estate license and his mother's PR connections. He had no idea it protected Elena's $50 billion empire. I understand, Elena said softly, rising from her chair with as much dignity as someone covered in mop water could manage. I'll leave now. See that you do, Patricia called out, and don't even think about coming to Richard's retirement party next month. We only want family there. Richard's retirement party, the one scheduled for December 15th at the company's flagship property downtown. The event Elena had personally approved a budget of $150,000 for, wanting to honor a loyal employee's 28 years in the industry. The same Richard Warren who had no idea he'd just encouraged his CEO to leave the premises. Elena walked through the ballroom, her heels clicking against marble, wet fabric clinging to her legs. 50 pairs of eyes followed her exit. Michael's college friends, his business associates, family members who'd never bothered to learn her background, her education, her capabilities. To them, she was simply the quiet wife who'd appeared 10 years ago, married their golden boy, and faded into the domestic background. What they didn't know could fill libraries. 10 years earlier, Elena Reyes had been 28 years old, holding a master's degree in real estate development from MIT and working 80-hour weeks at a boutique investment firm in Boston. She'd grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, daughter of a janitor and a home health aide, the first in her family to attend college. She'd paid for her undergraduate degree through scholarships, work-study programs, and a fierce determination that bordered on obsession. Real estate became her focus after watching her childhood neighborhood transform through gentrification. Watching families displaced, communities destroyed, wealth extracted by developers who saw only profit margins and never people. She decided then that if she couldn't stop the process, she could at least do it better, more ethically, with community investment built into the model. Her master's thesis had proposed a revolutionary approach to mixed-income housing development that preserved neighborhood character while generating sustainable returns. 3 professors told her it was impossible. 2 venture capital firms laughed her out of meetings. One older developer told her to get married and let the men handle business. She met Michael Warren at a charity gala in Manhattan. He was handsome, charming, working in his father's real estate management company with vague plans to expand and innovate that never seemed to materialize into actual work. He told her she was beautiful, intelligent, captivating. He introduced her to his parents as the most brilliant woman I've ever met. For 6 months, she believed he meant it. They married quickly. Too quickly, her mother warned. But Elena was tired of being alone, tired of the grinding work schedule, seduced by the idea of a partner who understood the industry. The prenup seemed reasonable. His family's wealth versus her student loans. She signed it without argument because she'd already decided that her real venture would remain separate, protected, entirely her own. 2 months after the wedding, she incorporated Martinez Reyes Development LLC, using the $47,000 she'd saved over 6 years. She bought a condemned property in Newark at auction for $23,000, spent $180,000 in renovation loans she secured through a combination of personal credit and a small business administration program, and flipped it 14 months later for $340,000. She rolled every dollar into the next project, then the next, then 3 simultaneous projects. She developed a reputation in certain circles as a mysterious investor who rehabilitated properties other developers had written off, who always paid contractors on time, who built with quality materials and community input. By year 3 of her marriage, Martinez Reyes Development owned properties worth $12 million. By year 5, $180 million. She'd expanded into commercial real estate, mixed-use developments, and strategic partnerships with community land trusts. Michael never asked where she went during the day. He assumed she was shopping, lunching with friends, occupying herself with the idle pursuits of a woman married to a man whose family had money. He never noticed the late-night phone calls she took in the home office, the detailed spreadsheets she reviewed over coffee, the property tours she scheduled under various pretenses. His inattention was her greatest advantage. By year 7, she'd rebranded the company as Warren Global Properties, a calculated irony that amused her privately. Using Michael's surname provided perfect cover. People assumed the company had connections to his family's small-time operation. She remained E.M. Reyes in all documentation, conducting business through attorneys and executives who respected her demand for privacy. The empire grew exponentially. Strategic acquisitions, international expansion, partnerships with institutional investors who valued her ethical approach and her uncanny ability to identify undervalued assets in emerging markets. By year 9, Forbes estimated her personal net worth at $31 billion, though they had no idea E.M. Reyes and Elena Warren were the same person. Throughout it all, Michael became more distant, more critical, more openly contemptuous of the wife he'd once claimed to admire. He complained she wasn't social enough, wasn't thin enough, wasn't interesting enough. He started coming home late, then not coming home at all. Elena hired investigators and documented everything, not because she was surprised she'd seen the deterioration coming for years, but because she believed in thorough preparation. When she discovered Amber Patterson 6 months ago, she'd actually felt a strange sense of relief. The end was finally arriving, which meant the next chapter could begin. The office. On Monday morning, Elena arrived at Warren Global Properties headquarters at 6:47 a.m., entering through the private executive entrance that opened directly into the CEO's suite on the 43rd floor. Her assistant, James Morrison, looked up from his desk in the anteroom with carefully controlled alarm. "Ma'am, I heard about Saturday night. Are you all right?" James was one of 7 people who knew Elena's dual identity. Gay, brilliant, fiercely loyal. He'd been with her for 9 years and had personally threatened to castrate Michael on 3 separate occasions. Elena had declined the offer but appreciated the sentiment. "I'm fine. Is the legal team assembled?" "Conference room B. They've been waiting since 6:30. James handed her a tablet displaying the morning's priority items. Also, Patricia Warren submitted an expense report for personal shopping she's trying to classify as PR research. It's the 3rd time this month. Deny it and pull her complete employment file. I want every expense report she submitted in the past 3 years, reviewed by forensic accounting." "With pleasure." James's smile was sharp. "What about Richard?" "Pull his file too, but his review is genuinely performance-based. I want to know if any complaints have been filed, if he's meeting his targets, if there are any legitimate issues beyond his unfortunate choice in family members." The legal team consisted of 4 partners from 3 different firms, each specializing in different aspects of what was about to unfold. They rose when Elena entered, their expressions ranging from barely concealed fury to professional concern. "Mrs. Warren," began Catherine Chen, the divorce specialist, "or should I say Miss Reyes?" "Elena's fine." She sat at the head of the table, accepting the coffee James placed at her elbow. "Status? Your husband filed divorce papers this morning at 8:01 a.m. He's citing irreconcilable differences and requesting spousal support of $75,000 monthly based on his accustomed lifestyle. He's also requesting the Park Avenue apartment, the summer house in the Hamptons, and 60% of all marital assets." Elena almost laughed. The properties Michael considered marital assets were actually rented in her name from shell companies she controlled. She'd been paying both mortgages out of her business accounts for years, while he assumed his family trust covered them. "His attorney is Gerald Marcus," Catherine continued, "competent but unimaginative. He's going to argue that you made minimal financial contributions to the marriage and should therefore receive minimal settlement." "Perfect. Let him." Elena turned to the next attorney, David Park, who specialized in corporate law. "What about the parents?" Richard Warren's employment contract contains a standard morality clause and a clause about conflicts of interest. Patricia's is similar, but also includes language about representing the company's values. I've drafted termination papers for both, but Elena, I have to advise. This will be seen as retaliation. Is Richard's performance satisfactory? Exemplary, actually. His portfolio has grown 15% year over year for the past 5 years. Tenant satisfaction is high. Maintenance issues are resolved promptly. He's genuinely good at his job. Then we don't terminate him. We transfer him. Elena's smile was cold. There's a portfolio in Anchorage that needs management. Same salary, same title, same benefits. Effective immediately. The Alaska housing market is booming, and his expertise would be valuable there. The team exchanged glances. Anchorage meant a 3,000-mile separation from family, from Amber, from his comfortable New York life. It was technically a lateral move, which made it legally defensible, but practically it was exile. Patricia is different, Elena continued. Pull every expense report, every receipt, every claim of business necessity. If there's fraud, and based on what James has shown me, there will be, we terminate for cause and pursue criminal charges. That seems, David hesitated. Elena, she's still your mother-in-law. She laughed while her son threw dirty water on me. She encouraged his mistress to assault me. She called me gold-digging trash while collecting a paycheck from my company. I'm not interested in family sentiment, David. I'm interested in appropriate consequences. The third attorney, Maria Gonzalez, handled public relations. When this goes public, and it will, the media response will be intense. Billionaire CEO reveals secret identity while divorcing husband is a headline that writes itself. We need a strategy. We don't reveal anything, Elena said firmly. Michael files for divorce from his nobody wife. His nobody wife quietly accepts. The divorce proceeds normally, and when the settlement is finalized, when he discovers his wife is retaining all her assets while he gets nothing, then maybe someone leaks information to a curious journalist, maybe several journalists. Maybe with documentation of his affair, his public humiliation of his spouse, and his family's complicity. The story will destroy him, Catherine said quietly. Yes, it will. The room fell silent. Elena knew what they were thinking, and that this was vindictive, excessive, cruel. But they hadn't been the ones covered in dirty water while 50 people watched. They hadn't felt the spit sliding down their face while a husband smiled and a mother-in-law laughed. One more thing, Elena said. I want every property Michael has toured in the past year cataloged. Every apartment he's looked at with Amber. Every house they've fantasized about buying. And I want our acquisition team to purchase all of them before he can make offers. James, standing by the door, actually giggled. The revelation. Michael's attorney requested an asset disclosure meeting for the following Thursday. Standard procedure. Both parties present documentation of income, property, investments, debts. Gerald Marcus had assured Michael it would be a quick process. His wife had no career, no income, no assets of consequence. The meeting took place at Marcus's law office in Midtown. Michael arrived with Amber, who insisted on attending despite the attorney's protests. Elena arrived alone, carrying a single leather portfolio. Mrs. Warren, thank you for coming. Gerald Marcus was 63, silver-haired, radiating the confidence of a man accustomed to winning. This should be straightforward. We'll review your financial disclosure, discuss settlement parameters, and hopefully reach an amicable agreement without lengthy litigation. Of course! Elena sat across from Michael, who refused to meet her eyes. Amber sat beside him, her hand possessively on his thigh, her smile triumphant. Let's begin with income, Marcus said, pulling out Michael's disclosure. My client earns approximately $185,000 annually as a property manager, plus bonuses. He has a trust fund valued at $3.2 million, whereas property holdings in Manhattan and the Hamptons valued at approximately $4.7 million, and various investments totaling another $900,000. He looked up expectantly. Mrs. Warren, your disclosure? Elena opened her portfolio and extracted a single page. She slid it across the table. Marcus frowned as he read. Then his frown deepened. Then his face went pale. This must be an error. No error, Catherine Chen said calmly from beside Elena. Those are accurate figures. But this says, Marcus looked at Michael, then at Elena, then back at the paper. This says your client has a net worth of $50.3 billion. Correct. The number hung in the air like smoke. Michael's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Amber's hand slipped from his thigh. That's impossible, Michael finally managed. She doesn't work. She doesn't. There's no way. Mrs. Warren is the sole owner and CEO of Warren Global Properties, Catherine continued smoothly. The company she founded 12 years ago, 3 years before your marriage, which she continued building throughout your relationship. Under the prenuptial agreement you insisted upon, all assets acquired through independent business ventures during the marriage remain her sole property. Warren Global Properties qualifies entirely under that clause. Warren Global Properties? Michael's voice was strangled. That's my family name. That's our company. Actually, your father works for Elena's company, as does your mother. Neither of them particularly well, I might add, but we'll address that separately. The color drained from Michael's face as understanding crashed through denial. Elena watched the progression with detached interest. Shock, confusion, disbelief, and finally the dawning horror of complete miscalculation. You were... Michael couldn't form complete sentences. Working, Elena said simply. Building, creating. The same things I was doing when we met, only with more success than you imagined possible. Amber found her voice first. This is fraud. She hid assets. She disclosed everything required by law, Catherine interrupted. The prenuptial agreement Mr. Warren proposed specifically protected independent business ventures. His attorney drafted that language. Elena simply took advantage of it. The properties, Michael whispered. The apartment, the summer house, rented from shell companies I control. You've been living in my properties for 8 years, Michael. I've been collecting rent from you that entire time, though you assumed your trust fund covered it. The actual payments were going right back into my business accounts. Gerald Marcus was frantically flipping through documents, searching for some escape clause, some loophole. He found nothing because Catherine had spent 10 years ensuring there was nothing to find. What about spousal support? Amber demanded, her voice shrill. He supported her. He deserves exactly what the prenup stipulates, Catherine said, which is calculated based on the lower earning spouse's contribution to the marriage. Mr. Warren's $185,000 salary means he'll receive approximately $1,400 monthly for 3 years, adjusted for inflation. $1,400? Michael's voice cracked. That's nothing. It's the legal formula based on your income disparity. If you'd like to argue Elena should receive spousal support from you instead, we're certainly willing to discuss that option. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Michael shouting, Amber screaming, Gerald Marcus frantically trying to restore order while simultaneously realizing his entire case had evaporated. Elena sat quietly through it all, her hands folded, her expression neutral. Finally, she spoke. Michael, you have 2 options. Option 1, accept the prenup terms, file for divorce, and walk away with your trust fund and investments intact. Option 2, fight me in court, where every detail of your affair becomes public record, where your family's employment issues at my company become headlines, and where you lose everything anyway but with additional legal fees and public humiliation. You can't do this, he whispered. I already have. Elena stood, gathering her portfolio. Your parents received employment notices this morning, by the way. Richard is being transferred to Anchorage effective next month. Congratulations to him on his promotion to Senior Regional Manager for the Northwest Territories. Patricia is under investigation for expense fraud. If the forensic accounting reveals what I suspect, she'll be terminated and charges will be filed. You vindictive bitch, Amber hissed. Elena turned to her slowly. You spat in my face, called me trash, and celebrated my humiliation. My response has been entirely professional and legally appropriate. Patricia committed fraud. Richard is receiving a legitimate transfer based on company needs, and Michael is receiving exactly what he negotiated for in the prenup his attorney drafted. None of this is revenge. It's simply consequences. She walked out of the conference room, Catherine following. Behind her, she heard Michael's anguished cry, Amber's hysterical sobbing, Marcus's desperate attempts to salvage something from the wreckage. James was waiting in the car outside, grinning like a lottery winner. How'd it go? Exactly as planned. I love it when you destroy people, James sighed happily. It's so elegant. The aftermath. The divorce finalized 63 days later. Michael contested nothing, accepted the minimal spousal support, and moved into a studio apartment in Queens with Amber. His trust fund, while still substantial, proved insufficient for the lifestyle he'd imagined. Amber left him within 4 months. Patricia Warren was terminated after forensic accounting revealed $340,000 in fraudulent expense claims over 3 years. Criminal charges were filed. She pleaded guilty to avoid trial and received 2 years probation, plus restitution payments. Her comfortable life evaporated overnight. Richard Warren accepted the transfer to Anchorage. In a surprising twist, he thrived there, later telling colleagues it was the best career move he'd made in 20 years. He sent Elena a thank you card at the corporate office, not knowing E.M. Reyes would read it personally. The media discovered the story eventually. A leaked email here, a curious journalist there. Secret billionaire divorces husband who humiliated her, ran on page 6 of the New York Post. Forbes did a full profile on E.M. Reyes, finally revealing the woman behind the empire. Business Insider called it the most satisfying revenge story in corporate history. Elena gave exactly one interview to a female business journalist she respected. Was it worth it? The journalist asked. The secrecy, the hidden life, the years of pretending? Elena considered the question carefully. I didn't build Warren Global Properties to get revenge on a man who hadn't even betrayed me yet. I built it because I believed in the work, because I wanted to prove I could do development differently, ethically, successfully. The fact that my ownership remained hidden was practical, not vindictive. Female CEOs face different scrutiny. I avoided that scrutiny by staying anonymous. And the revenge? That was just a bonus, Elena said with the first genuine smile she'd shown in months. A very satisfying bonus. Warren Global Properties continued to grow. Elena emerged from anonymity gradually, allowing her face to appear in marketing materials, attending industry conferences, building a public profile. She established a foundation supporting women entrepreneurs in real estate, specifically those from working-class backgrounds. She never remarried, never even dated seriously. When asked about it, she'd smile and say she was too busy building empires to waste time on men who couldn't appreciate the one that already existed. And sometimes, late at night in her office overlooking Manhattan, she'd remember the feeling of dirty water soaking through silk, of spit sliding down her cheek, of Michael's hand on his mistress's back as his mother laughed. She'd remember and she'd smile and she'd return to her work, building, creating, proving every single day that the woman they'd dismissed as nothing had become absolutely everything they'd never imagined possible. The empire grew, the revenge was complete, and Elena Martinez Warren Reyes had finally, definitively won. The conference room on the 43rd floor of Warren Global Properties headquarters held 27 people, all waiting for E.M. Reyes to arrive. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered in the late afternoon sun, the city sprawling beneath them like a kingdom made of glass and steel. Elena entered at exactly 3 p.m., her presence commanding immediate silence. At 43, she'd stopped hiding behind anonymity and had instead cultivated a reputation that made her anonymity irrelevant. Forbes had recently ranked her the 18th richest person in the world. Bloomberg called her the most influential developer of the 21st century. The Wall Street Journal ran a cover story titled, How Elena Reyes Changed Real Estate Forever. Thank you all for coming, she said, moving to the head of the table. I'll keep this brief. We're announcing the Newark Community Partnership today, a $2 billion initiative to develop affordable housing across 15 neighborhoods while preserving local businesses and community character. James, now her chief of staff, distributed presentation folders to each attendee. The first property being renovated is at 847 Martin Luther King Boulevard. Some of you may recognize the address. Elena smiled slightly. It was the condemned building she'd purchased 12 years ago for $23,000, the first property that had started everything. She'd bought it back 6 months ago for $1.2 million, coming full circle. We're also announcing the Reyes Scholarship, she continued, full-ride college funding for 100 students annually from working-class backgrounds, pursuing degrees in real estate development, urban planning, or community development. The first recipient is Maria Santos from Queens, daughter of a janitor and a home health aide. The journalist scribbled notes. The television cameras recorded. Elena answered questions with practiced ease, discussing affordable housing models, community land trusts, sustainable development practices, all the things she'd been building toward for 15 years. The press conference ended at 4:30 p.m. As the room cleared, James approached with his tablet. You have 3 items requiring immediate attention. First, Richard Warren is requesting a transfer back to the East Coast. His wife misses New York, and apparently Alaska winters are character-building but exhausting. Approve it. Boston portfolio. He's earned it. Second, Michael Warren's LinkedIn shows he's working as a rental agent in Queens. Salary appears to be around $47,000 annually. Elena felt nothing at the information. Not satisfaction, not pity, nothing. Michael had become irrelevant the moment she'd walked out of Gerald Marcus's office 5 years ago. And third, Amber Patterson is engaged to a dentist from New Jersey. She's selling her story to a tabloid. I dated a secret billionaire's husband and didn't know it. Letter. The story's old news now. Elena gathered her materials. What's my evening look like? Dinner with the mayor at 7 to discuss the Affordable Housing Initiative. Then you're speaking at the Women in Business Conference at 9. Cancel the conference. I'm exhausted, and I've given that same speech 4 times this month. You're the keynote, Elena. 2,000 women paid $500 each to hear you talk about building empires in silence. She sighed. Fine, but I'm leaving by 10 p.m. regardless of networking obligations. James grinned. There's also a personal item. You received a letter. Physical mail, handwritten, addressed to you personally. He handed her a cream-colored envelope with elegant script. No return address, but the postmark read, Anchorage, Alaska. Elena opened it standing there, curious. Dear Ms. Reyes, I'm writing this letter because I need to say something I should have said 5 years ago. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how my family treated you. I'm sorry for laughing when my son humiliated you. I'm sorry for every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every moment I treated you like you were less than us, when the truth was the complete opposite. I didn't write sooner because I was angry. Angry about Patricia's arrest, angry about Michael's divorce, angry about what I perceived as your revenge. But 5 years in Alaska gives a person time to think, and what I've come to realize is that you didn't take revenge. You simply stopped protecting us from the consequences of our own actions. My wife committed fraud. My son was cruel and unfaithful. I stood by and watched it happen, even encouraged it. You didn't destroy our family. We did that ourselves. You just removed the safety net we didn't know we were standing in. The transfer to Anchorage was the best thing that ever happened to my career. I'm managing a portfolio twice the size of my New York territory, working with communities that actually need good housing, making a real difference. My wife and I are moving back east next month. But I wanted you to know that these 5 years changed me, made me better, made me see the work the way I think you've always seen it, as service, not just profit. I heard about the Newark initiative. It's exactly the kind of project I wish I'd had the vision to propose myself. You're changing the industry, Elena. You're changing lives. Thank you for that. And again, I'm sorry for not seeing you clearly when it mattered. Respectfully, Richard Warren. Elena read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and placed it back in the envelope. She felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness exactly, but a softening. An acknowledgement that people could grow, could learn, could become better than their worst moments. Good news, James asked. Surprising news. Sometimes people actually learn from consequences. Speaking of consequences, Patricia Warren was released from probation last month. She's working as a receptionist at a dental office in New Jersey. The same dental office where Amber's fiancé worked, Elena realized. The universe had a sense of irony. And Michael? Still trying to rebuild, still bitter from what our sources indicate. He gives interviews occasionally about how he never really knew his ex-wife, portrays himself as the victim. Let him. Elena moved toward her private office, ready to prepare for the evening's obligations. Some people learn from their mistakes. Others just learn to blame someone else for them. She paused at her office door, looking back at James. You know what's strange? I spent 10 years hiding, building in secret, afraid of what would happen if people knew the truth. And now that everyone knows, now that my face is on magazine covers and my name is on buildings, I realized the hiding was never really about strategy. What was it about? Fear. Fear that I wasn't enough, that my success would be questioned or diminished or attributed to someone else. But success doesn't need permission, James. It doesn't need approval. It just needs work, vision, and the courage to build something even when nobody's watching. Profound and slightly cheesy, the Women in Business Conference will love it. Elena laughed, genuine, unguarded. Write that down. I'll use it in the speech. She entered her office and closed the door, moving to the windows that overlooked the city. Somewhere down there, Michael was showing apartments to renters who didn't know his name. Patricia was answering phones for $18 an hour. Amber was planning a wedding to a man who could never give her the lifestyle she'd once imagined. And Richard Warren was packing boxes in Alaska, preparing to return east, perhaps having learned something about humility and consequences. Elena didn't feel triumph anymore when she thought about them. She felt nothing, not pity, not anger, not satisfaction. They'd become footnotes in a story that had moved far beyond that single moment of humiliation. The empire she'd built in secret had become the empire she led in daylight. The revenge she'd executed so precisely had transformed into something larger, a legacy of ethical development, community investment, and proof that success built on genuine value would always outlast success built on cruelty. Her phone buzzed. A text from James. Mayor is running 15 minutes late. You have time to review the scholarship criteria if you want. Elena pulled up the scholarship application on her tablet. Maria Santos, the first recipient, had written an essay about watching her neighborhood change, about wanting to build housing that served communities instead of displacing them. The words could have been Elena's own from 15 years ago. The cycle continued, the work expanded, the mission evolved, and Elena Martinez Warren Reyes, the woman who'd once sat silent while dirty water soaked through silk, now sat in an office 43 floors above the city she was helping rebuild. Not through revenge, but through the steady, relentless work of proving that building something real would always matter more than destroying those who'd underestimated her. The sunset painted Manhattan gold and crimson. Elena watched it for a moment, allowing herself this pause, this breath, this acknowledgement of how far she'd traveled from that ballroom where everything had shattered and reformed. Then she returned to her desk, to the scholarship files, to the housing proposals, to the endless work of building empires that would outlast any personal vendetta. Because in the end, the best revenge wasn't leaving them with nothing. It was building something so substantial, so meaningful, so utterly transformative that their cruelty became irrelevant. A footnote in a much larger story about what one woman could create when she stopped hiding and started building in the light. The empire endured, the work continued, and Elena had finally, completely, become everything she'd always known she could be.